Details surrounding the disappearance of 7-year-old Kyron Horman. We have inside information on the restraining order Kyron's dad got against Kyron's stepmom. What did Kyron Horman tell the judge to bar his estranged wife, Terry Horman, from being able to even have contact with their 18-month-old daughter? Plus, breaking news tonight, we have learned about a 911 call made from the home right before the divorce drama erupted. Terry Horman, who is the missing boy's stepmom, has been under the microscope since Kyron disappeared nearly 4 weeks ago. She purportedly snapped the now infamous photo of little Kyron at his science fair just moments before he vanished. Little Kyron has not been seen since this. This week, Kyron's dad suddenly moved out, got a restraining order, filed for divorce, and took their baby girl with him. Kyron's dad says he cannot even think about the horrible things that might have happened to his son.
He is somewhere, hopefully with someone who is taking care of him, and he's protected and safe. And that's, whether or not that's what actually happened, I can't branch predict every other thing that comes to my mind because I don't want to.
The restraining order against Terry Horman is sealed, but by law, it must show why Kyron Horman, you just heard from him, feared his wife was a threat to himself and their baby girl. What did cops tell Kyron Horman that led him to take such drastic action? And will this all somehow help find Kyron? I am taking your calls on this. Give me a holler, 1-877-JVN says. That's 1-877-586-7297. Straight out to my fantastic panel, all experts on this case. But we begin with investigative reporter Michelle Sagona. Michelle, what is the very latest?
At this particular point, I can verify for you from Lieutenant Lindstrand that there was definitely a 911 call placed from the Horman household on Saturday evening at some point. And sometime after that 911 call, that is when Kyron and his daughter packed up and they left the home. And then that's when we know on Monday the divorce paperwork was filed, the restraining order paperwork was filed. And so it just makes you wonder what happened at that house on Saturday night to be able to turn this case around and to be able to have evidence to bring to a judge and to keep this mother away from her 19-month-old daughter. We don't know at this particular time because the sheriff's office is not releasing a lot of that information, but Lieutenant Lindstrand did say today, she said, look, she said, we're continuing to go out on leads. This is not something that we are just kind of closing off and zeroing in on one particular area. All ends of this case are still open, and they still need your calls tonight.
Well, my understanding is that Saturday is also the day that she was told or had to take the second polygraph. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding, but unfortunately the sheriff's office will not confirm that information at this time.
But I mean, you've got a lot happening on Saturday.
There's a lot going on here.
Pat Brown, you've got her taking the second polygraph reportedly. You've got him deciding to leave, but before that there's a 911 call that talks about threats. And he takes off, and then on Monday he gets a restraining order and files for divorce.
Yeah, you know, Jane, this is very, very unusual because when you have this kind of a situation, even if there's a possibility of one parent being involved, almost always you see the other parent standing by them, absolutely denying they could have any involvement. And in this particular case, this is not what you're seeing. You're seeing, well, basically him and the other people in the family, like rats fleeing a ship. They're all gone. I mean, they're like leaving her stranded. And that's so unusual. One has to think that there is a tremendous amount of information that has really sent up red flags to them where they said, oh, my God.
Well, yeah, and let me say this. We know, according to published reports, that all of this erupted after Kyron Horman, Kyron's dad, was fully updated by law enforcement as to what was going on with their investigation. Quick reaction to that, Pat Brown.
Well, there must be something that she said in her interviews that aren't matching the reality, and he's beginning to realize that she is not telling the truth, and if she's not telling the truth, why would that... What could that possibly be? And he has to know the answer to that, and it's a terrible one.
Yeah, but, you know, I got to say, well, let's rewind to last weekend at the home of Kyron and Terry Horman. Saturday the 26th, a monumental day. Somebody calls 911 from the home, and all we know about that call is it involves some sort of threat. Now, 2 days later, this past Monday, Terry tells a reporter her husband Kyron has not moved out, gives a thumbs up and says, quote, everything is good, end quote. Was she lying? Less than 1 hour later, Terry is served with a restraining order and divorce papers. This all comes on the heels of a second polygraph given to Terry, which was scheduled for Saturday the 26th, the same day as the 911 call. The restraining order. Yeah, go ahead.
Jane, I wonder if during that 911 call something was said that was on tape, because I'm wondering what is the judge listening to that is really going to give him the right to, to do this particular restraining order, absolutely no contact. I'm wondering if during that 911 call there were things said that they said, whoa, wait a minute, he's got a point here. So I'm curious to see what that one said.
All right, well, let's take a closer look at that 911 call made from the Horman home. The sheriff's office says it came in at 5:46 p.m. Saturday regarding threats on the property the very day Kyron's dad, then apparently right after that call, moved out of the home that he had shared with his wife, who was the last person to have seen his little son. Now, what kind of threats trigger a 911 call? Was the threat perhaps from a member of the public harassing Terry? You know, very nasty things have been said about her on the internet. Certainly, the parents of murder suspect Casey Anthony, they know what it's like to be harassed by the public. Check this out.
Say about the new theory that Casey might be dead, it might have been an accident. Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
And George Anthony flew into a rage trying to get people off his property. People actually protested on the front lawn of Casey Anthony's parents' home. So I have to ask you, J.D. Weintraub, all we know about it is 911 call involving threats. If it was a domestic dispute between, and we can get rid of the Anthonys now, we're back to the Hormans. If it was a 911 call involving a domestic dispute, wouldn't it be logged as domestic instead of a threat?
Exactly. It would have been logged as domestic, and typically they would have made an arrest, and they didn't. And that brings me to another point. You know, we're all rushing to judgment. We have to take a step back, Jane, for two reasons. One, there's been no reports of any domestic violence in the past. There's been no prior 911 or police activity to that home. That says a lot. And third, I want to point out that they have a 19-month-old together, and she has a teenager of her own from a prior marriage. This is not somebody that's M.O. is going to be to hurt a child or is jealous of a child in that marriage.
But we're learning more about her. We're learning about Terry Horman. In 2005, she had a DUI. ABCNews.com reports that her 11-year-old son was in the car when Terry was pulled over. She had a blood alcohol level of 0.15. She was charged with DUI and child endangerment. We're looking at her mugshot. She pleaded guilty and was sentenced to probation for 12 months and alcohol education classes. She's also had 8 other traffic violations between 1988 and 2004, most of them for speeding. Brendan Wade, political psychologist, could alcohol be a factor, possibly, in her behavior?
It absolutely could be a factor, Jane. We know how high the recidivism rate is when people are struggling with this terrible disease, and clearly, if this family came apart that fast, he's filed for divorce, he's moved out, something was already wrong. This was a fragile family, a fragile marriage. Nobody's marriage that is strong unravels in 24 hours. It just doesn't work that way.
Joanna,
So
Kentucky, your question or thought, ma'am?
Jane, I was just wondering about this woman that's doing this weight training and bodybuilding. What about steroid rage?
Oh, well, that's a very interesting aspect to this case. One of the sides of Terry Horman that we're going to talk about right after the break is that she, the stepmom, the one who is, although not a suspect or a person of interest, apparently the focus of the investigation into the disappearance of her stepson, Kyron, she's a bodybuilder. We're going to talk about that. We're going to show you actually some pictures of her bodybuilding on the other side of the break. Everybody stay right.
She was a bodybuilder. It doesn't appear by her pictures, everyone, that she is a bodybuilder or on steroids. I hate this speculation.